The thunder of hooves shakes the valley, and the air is thick with dust. It clings to steel and cloth. It fills your lungs with the taste of earth and fear. You and the other Knights Templar hold the line, white cloaks whipping in the wind, each chest marked with the crimson cross. Behind you, the pilgrims huddle together, women clutching thin children, old men leaning on trembling sticks, the lame dragging their feet toward the promise of salvation. Ahead, the bandits are waiting, 3 times your number, spilling over the hillsides like a swarm of starving crows. But you are not afraid. Once you were a Viking chieftain, the one who stood at the prow of the dragon ship, charging into storms, the first to land and the last to leave the battlefield. Yet now, in the mud and chaos, your sword lies broken in 2. They surge forward. You stagger back, boots sinking in the sucking mire, warm blood striking the edge of your helmet. Wind howls past your ears, voices scream through the clash. And then, in that storm of panic and steel, you catch a glint of silver beneath your collar, an old talisman bound in bronze carved with the roots of Yggdrasil. You have worn it since you were small enough to crawl across cold wooden floors, long before you ever knew the name of Christ. You draw a slow breath. Your chest rises steady now. And in that moment you remember who you are. Not a knight in holy robes. A son of the sea, of snow, of axe and fire. Your free hand closes tight. The second blade slides free, a true Ulfberht, etched with the runes of the north. It does not belong to the Holy Land. It does not belong to France. It belongs to the frozen shores and the restless spirits of your people. You plant your feet, straighten your back, and let out a roar in a tongue no one here understands. For a heartbeat, the bandits hesitate. Just one beat. And that is enough. But how does a Viking, child of Odin, become a knight of Christ? That story doesn't begin here in the mud and blood. It begins far away on a shore of grey waves and biting wind, when you were only a boy with no sword, no title, only tangled hair whipped by the northern breeze and a reckless smile. And if you listen closely, you can still hear it now, the crackle of a fire in a timber hall, the deep voices of old warriors singing into the smoke, and the soft hiss of the tide creeping up the frozen sand. That is where your story waits, still warm, still breathing, ready to take its first step. The great hall breathes around you like a living beast. The heat from the central fire rolls over the timber walls, carrying with it the sharp resin of pine logs and the heavy scent of roasting meat. Smoke curls upward in soft grey ribbons, clinging to the carved dragon heads mounted on the beams above. You sit low at the edge of the long bench, so small that your feet barely graze the fur-covered floor. All around you, the voices of the warriors rise and fall, deep and rough like the sea outside in winter. Every time a drinking horn strikes the heavy table, the sound shivers through your chest as if it has chosen you to remember it. You hold a stick smoothed by your own hands, pretending it is steel, pretending it belongs. Outside, the wind moves like a hand across the fjord, pressing its cold breath into the cracks of the hall. It carries salt and snow, the same 2 flavors you have known since the first day you opened your eyes. You have heard the tide longer than you have heard your own name. Its rhythm has been the first song, the one that never ends. Somewhere closer to the fire, a man begins to tell a story. His voice is low and deliberate, weaving words as if he is setting a net. He speaks of Odin riding storm clouds and Thor splitting the sky to make way for fallen warriors. The fire crackles as if answering him. You lean forward, drinking in every syllable. You do not yet fear the gods. You only want to be counted among them. A hand lands on your shoulder, heavy and rough. The skin is ridged from rope and salt water. The smell of steel and sea clings to it. Your father does not speak. He never speaks in moments like this. But the weight of his palm tells you what no words could, that he sees you listening, sees you wanting, and perhaps, just perhaps, sees what you might become. You keep your eyes fixed on the fire, though the heat stings your cheeks. You picture yourself grown, standing at the head of the table, your deeds sung into the smoke by voices as rough and sure as these. The thought does not frighten you, it makes something inside your chest burn. Hours slip by like waves in the dark. The horns pass from hand to hand, the laughter rises, and the smell of the fire seeps into everything, until even your hair will carry it for days. The stories blur together, until they are no longer words, but the hum of a heartbeat surrounding you. Your eyelids grow heavy, and as you slide toward sleep, the hall dissolves into the sound beneath all sounds, the sea. Its breath moves through you, slow and endless. In the dark behind your eyes, the waves are vast and black, curling over and over, and within them something takes shape. At first you think it is only the fire's reflection, but no, it is too old, too steady. Roots twist downward into the deep, and branches stretch towards stars you have never seen. You do not know its name. You only know that it belongs to you. When you wake again, the hall has gone quiet. The fire has fallen to a bed of glowing embers, small suns fading into ash. The benches are empty, the laughter has left, but lingers like a ghost in the rafters. You rise carefully, the cold of the floor biting at your bare feet, and push the door open. The night swallows you whole. The air outside is a blade, sharp and clean, full of salt and snow. Clouds hang low over the fjord, smothering the moonlight, turning the water below into a mirror of black glass. You stand there, shivering not from cold, but from the sudden sense of how small you are against this endless dark. The world does not notice you yet, and that realization cuts deeper than the wind. Behind you, the pine trees sway, their needles whispering in a language you almost understand. You turn your head toward the hall. Through the cracks in the wood, faint orange light seeps out, the last trace of warmth clinging to the night. Something moves inside you then, not a thought, not even a feeling you can name, just a quiet weight settling into your bones. One day you will have to leave this place. One day the tide will call you past the line of the horizon, and either you will come back as a story worth telling or not at all. You drop to your knees in the packed snow, your small hand pressing into the frozen earth as if it could hold you here. You do not speak. There are no words for promises like this. The sea hears you anyway. The wind carries it into the trees. The fire behind you keeps it warm. You will carry this hall, this night, this vow into every storm. You will carve your name into the memory of the waves. And far beneath the black water, where roots and branches reach beyond sight, something ancient stirs as if it has been waiting for this moment, as if it knows you and chooses to wait for you to become what you are meant to be. The morning comes not with sunlight, but with smoke. You wake to the scent before you hear the screams, a bitter sting that seeps through the wooden walls of the hall. Your first thought is of the fire pit, that perhaps a log has fallen and sent sparks where they do not belong. But then the door bursts open and the world outside spills in. The light is red, not the gentle glow of dawn, but the violent pulse of something alive and angry. The wind carries more than salt now. It carries the sound of men shouting and the harsh clash of steel. You stumble into the cold barefoot, the snow biting at your skin as your breath catches in the frozen air. The village is no longer a place you know. Flames lick at the roofs of the houses nearest the shore. Figures move between them, too many and too fast, their shapes blurred in the smoke. You hear the cry of someone you know, and the answering roar of a man's rage. Your heart hammers not with courage, but with the sharp edge of fear you have never tasted before. It tastes like iron, like the blood you have only seen on hunted animals, never on men you grew up beside. Your father's voice cuts through the chaos. It is not a call, but a command. He is already there, axe in hand, the weight of his body moving like a storm through the attackers. You want to run to him, to hide behind the strength that has always been enough to keep the world at bay, but something else stops you. A shape breaks through the smoke in front of you, a man you do not know, his eyes wild with the hunger of a raider. He does not see a child, he sees something in his way. Your fingers close around the stick you have carried so many nights in the hall, the one smoothed by dreams of battle. It is not a sword, it is not even a weapon, but in this moment it is all you have. You swing clumsily, a motion born more of instinct than thought, and wood meets flesh with a sound that will live forever in your ears. He stumbles, more in surprise than pain, and your father is there in an instant. The axe comes down, and the man does not rise again. Your father's eyes meet yours for a heartbeat. There is no anger, no praise, only a sharp understanding that what was done cannot be undone. The rest of the morning is a blur of fire and running feet. You hear your mother's voice calling your name, see her arms outstretched as she pulls you into the dark of your home. Her hands are shaking, though she tries to hide it, as she presses something into your palm. A small weight, cool against your skin. You look down and see the bronze glint of a talisman. Etched into it is the tree you saw in your half-dream by the fire. Its roots curl into the metal, its branches reach outward like it is trying to hold the world. Your mother's voice is low when she speaks. She tells you to keep it close, that it is more than metal, that it remembers who you are even when you do not. The rest of that day you remember in pieces, the wind driving smoke across the fjord, the sound of waves pulling at the burning timbers that fall into the water, the stillness of the men lying where they fought. And the way the hall smelled when the fire was finally out, a mix of ash and salt and something you cannot name but will never forget. That night, no stories are told. The benches are empty. The fire is cold. You sit with the talisman clutched tight in your small hand, and the silence presses harder than the wind ever could. When the sky finally clears, you walk down to the shore. The tide has carried away much of the wreckage, but the water is streaked with soot and memory. You kneel where the waves meet the sand, letting the cold bite into your knees, and you hold the talisman out over the water. You do not know what you are asking for. You only know you are making a promise. The sea hears it. The trees hear it. And deep inside, so do you. One day you will stand between this place and the fire. One day the waves will carry your name farther than fear ever could. Days pass, though time does not move the way it used to. The smoke has faded from the air, but its taste lingers in every breath. The village rebuilds in silence. Where laughter once filled the hall, there are only the sounds of hammers striking wood and the low murmur of voices that cannot find joy yet. You carry the talisman everywhere, the bronze warmed by your skin, until it feels like part of you. When you sleep, you curl your fingers around it. When you wake, you check that it is still there before you take a single step. It is not just metal anymore. It is the line between who you were and what you are becoming. Your mother works with hands that never stop moving. She weaves nets, mends torn sails, prepares food for those who lost everything. At night, when the wind cuts through the gaps in the walls, you hear her whispering words you cannot make out. They are not the names of the gods you know. They are not any words you have heard her say before. You do not ask. Some things are not questions. Some things are shields held up in the dark. Your father is different now. His silence is heavier. When he looks at you, you see not only the man who lifted you onto his shoulders to watch the ships return, but the man who saw you swing a stick at another human being and did not stop you. He sharpens his axe every night, the rasp of stone on steel, a steady heartbeat in the cold. You sit near him without speaking. The rhythm of the blade comforts you, though you cannot say why. Perhaps because it is proof that he is still here. Perhaps because it reminds you that one day the weight of steel will be in your hands for real. The winter deepens. Snow piles high against the walls, and the sea grows wild with ice at its edges. You wander to the pine grove beyond the village one morning, the talisman clutched under your tunic. The trees are heavy with frost, their needles bending under the weight of it. You press your hand to the trunk of the oldest one, its bark rough and cold, and for a moment you feel as if the tree is breathing under your palm. You close your eyes and listen. The wind through the branches sounds like whispers, but not the language of men, something older, something that does not care about fire or blood or names. It is the same feeling you had in the half-dream, the vision of roots sinking deep into dark water and branches reaching for stars. You press your forehead against the tree and hold the talisman tight. It feels like the world is listening. When you return to the village, you find your father waiting by the shore. He does not ask where you have been. He only looks out at the water and says, not to you but to the wind, that a man is not born a protector. He becomes one when the sea takes something from him, and he chooses to stand anyway. You do not answer. You do not need to. You understand what he means. You have already felt the taking. That night, the hall fills again, though not with celebration. The warriors gather, not to boast, but to plan. You sit quietly near the door, listening as they speak of watchmen, of stronger walls, of more ships to patrol the fjord. The fire crackles, and for a heartbeat, you imagine the hall as it was before, alive with songs and stories. You close your eyes and see the tree again, the one carved into the bronze. You do not know why, but you think of roots and branches every time someone says the word home. Later, when the voices have faded and the hall stands quiet, you take the talisman from your neck. You trace the lines of Yggdrasil with your thumb. The roots feel deep under your skin, the branches reaching beyond your touch. You think of your mother's hands shaking as she gave it to you, of the way her voice broke when she told you to keep it close. You think of your father's silence and the weight of his palm on your shoulder. You think of the sea and the fire and the old pine tree breathing under your hand. You hold all of it together in that small piece of metal, and for the first time you realize it is not just a gift. It is a reminder. It is a demand. It is the weight of everything you must carry and everything you must become. You hang it back around your neck and lie down near the dying fire. The embers glow soft and red, like the last heartbeat of the day. You press the talisman against your chest and whisper nothing at all. The sea knows, the trees know, the roots and the branches know. You are no longer just a boy pretending with a stick. You are a promise waiting to be kept. The morning the tide turns, the fjord is silent. No gulls cry above the water, no wind scrapes the surface. The air feels heavy, as if the sea itself is holding its breath. You stand on the shore with your father. the cold sand biting through the thin leather of your boots. Behind you, the village waits. Men tighten straps on their shields. Women gather the youngest children near the hall, and the smell of fear hides under the sharper scents of salt and pine. You are 16 now, taller, stronger, with arms hardened by oars and shoulders shaped by carrying weight you never wanted but never refused. The talisman hangs under your tunic, warmed by your skin, a familiar weight that has never left you. Today, it feels heavier. You know why. The ships have been spotted on the horizon, not your ships, not the carved dragon heads you grew up seeing glide across the fjord. Strangers, raiders, a threat so close you can already hear the faint echo of their war horns carried on the wind. Your father places his axe into your hands. For a moment you just stare at it. It is not the worn stick you used to swing in the hall. It is steel, old and dark, the edge glinting with a promise you are not sure you are ready to keep. Your father's eyes meet yours. There is no speech, no blessing. Just a nod that says everything. You will stand or you will fall, but you will not run. When the ships cut into the fjord, the world narrows to the sound of water against hulls and the thrum of blood in your ears. The enemy leaps onto the shore with the hunger of men who have come to take and burn. The clash comes fast, steel on steel, shield on shield. You move without thinking, the weight of the axe pulling you forward, the memory of fire and smoke from that day years ago burning behind your eyes. You are no longer the boy clutching a stick. You are the one standing between the hall and the flames. The first man you meet is taller than you, his face hidden behind a dented helmet. He swings down hard, and the shock of the blow rings up your arms as you raise the axe to meet it. The sound is deafening, metal screaming against metal. For a heartbeat, the world is only the weight of his strike and the strength in your legs as you refuse to fall. You pivot, swinging wide, and the blade bites deep into the gap between his armor and his side. The scream that follows is not the roar of a warrior, but the sound of someone realizing they will not see another sunrise. It cuts through you more than the clash of steel ever could. The fight spreads like fire. The shoreline becomes a storm of bodies and voices, of splintering wood, and the wet slap of waves turned red. You lose sight of your father. You lose sight of everything except the next swing, the next step, the next breath. The talisman thumps against your chest with every movement, as if reminding you that you are more than this moment, and yet bound to it forever. When the last of them fall, when the silence rushes in heavier than the screams, you stand among the wreckage with blood on your hands and salt on your tongue. The survivors gather in the hall that night. The fire burns high, not in celebration, but in defiance of what almost happened. You sit near the center now, the axe leaning against your knee, the weight of it different somehow. The warriors speak of victory, of how the village held, of how the fjord will remember this day, but their voices blur into a hum you barely hear. You look into the flames and feel something shift inside you, not pride, not relief, something quieter, something heavier. You understand now why your father said a man becomes a protector only when the sea takes something from him. Today, it took the last of your childhood. When the hall empties, you walk down to the shore alone. The moonlight lays silver across the water, softening the jagged edges of the day. You kneel at the edge where the tide kisses the sand and pull the talisman from your tunic. The bronze catches the light, the carved roots and branches gleaming faintly as if they are alive. You press it to your forehead and close your eyes. You do not ask for strength. You do not ask for mercy. You make the same promise you made as a boy, but now it feels different. Now it feels earned. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of pine from the grove behind you. The sea answers with a slow pull of the tide, a sound like breathing. You stay there until the cold sinks deep into your bones and the stars blur overhead. When you finally rise, you do not feel like the same person who walked to this shore. You are not a boy anymore. You are a name the sea has begun to remember. Spring breaks the grip of winter with slow, deliberate hands. The ice along the edges of the fjord cracks and drifts away in pale shards, revealing water as dark as polished stone. The ships return to the sea one by one, their dragon heads cutting through mist like watchful guardians. You stand among the crew now, no longer the boy hiding behind benches, but a warrior whose name is spoken with quiet respect. The axe your father gave you rests at your side, its weight a familiar companion. The talisman hangs beneath your tunic, the bronze warmed by skin and sweat, carrying the memory of roots and branches into the salt air. This voyage is not a raid born of desperation, but one of ambition. The Council of Elders has spoken of silver and land beyond the horizon, of new stories waiting to be carved into wood and sung into smoke. You listen as the old captain recites the names of gods to bless the keel and the sails. His voice is low and steady, each word an anchor cast into the unknown. When the ropes are cut and the oars bite the water, you feel the world shift beneath your feet. The land fades and the sea swallows everything else. Days on the longship blur into a rhythm of muscle and breath. Oars rise and fall, creaking in their locks, the sound like a heartbeat shared among men. The wind brings scents of places unseen, warm currents carrying whispers of southern lands. At night, the sky stretches vast and endless above you. You lie on the deck, the wood beneath you cold but steady, and count stars until they blur together into a river of light. Somewhere among them, you imagine the branches of the great tree reaching farther than the eye can follow. You touch the talisman and wonder if it listens. Weeks into the journey, the sea changes. The air grows heavy and damp. The horizon darkens with clouds that rise higher and faster than any you have seen before. The captain's voice, once steady, drops into a harsh whisper as orders snap across the deck. The sails are drawn in, the oars dig deep, but the ocean has already decided. The first wave strikes like a fist, drenching the ship in icy spray. The second lifts the dragon's head so high you feel weightless before it slams down into the trough. The sky splits with the sound of thunder, so close it rattles the bones in your chest. You grip the oar until your knuckles burn, your arms straining as the ship bucks and twists. Rain lashes your face, salt and water, indistinguishable as they stream into your eyes. Men shout prayers to Odin, to Thor, to anyone listening. A mast cracks with a sound like bone snapping, and the deck pitches beneath you. The world becomes a blur of black water and white foam, the horizon lost to the storm. You hear the captain call for the gods to spare the ship, but the wind swallows his voice whole. Hours lose their meaning. The storm is no longer weather. It is a living thing, a beast of sky and sea, and you are a speck in its jaws. When the hull finally gives way beneath your feet, the sound is not loud. It is a low groan, almost a sigh, and then the deck tilts and the world spills sideways. You are thrown into the cold without breath, the ocean swallowing you in a single, merciless gulp. The water is everywhere. It is not waves or spray anymore. It is a weight pressing in on every side, crushing sound and light and thought. You kick, fight, claw your way upward until your lungs burn and the surface breaks above you. The night sky flashes white with lightning, and in that moment you see the ship in pieces. Men cling to debris, their faces wide with fear, but the next wave swallows them whole. You reach for the closest shape, fingers scraping wet wood, but it is gone before you can hold it. Time shatters into heartbeats and gasps. The storm does not end. It only takes. One by one, voices vanish into the roar of water. You call out, but the wind tears the sound away. Your arms ache, your chest burns, and still you kick, refusing to let go. The talisman presses hard against your skin, its weight the only solid thing left in the world. You clutch it even as the waves tear everything else away. When the dawn comes, the sea is still. The sky is pale and raw, and you are alone. The dragon head of your ship drifts nearby, broken but still proud. You cling to it, your fingers numb and stiff, and let the tide carry you wherever it chooses. Around you, the ocean stretches endless and empty, holding the silence of all it has taken. You do not cry. The sea has no use for tears. You only breathe, each breath a defiance, each heartbeat a promise that you are not done yet. The sea keeps you for days, though it does not kill you. It cradles and punishes in equal measure, rolling your broken body across swells that rise and fall like the breath of some vast creature. The sun burns you by day, and the cold gnaws your bones by night. You drink rain when the sky offers it, and salt when it does not. Hunger twists you until it becomes something dull, a steady ache instead of a scream. You lose track of time, the horizon a ring of grey that never changes, the world reduced to water, sky, and the steady beat of your own heart refusing to stop. You talk to no one, but the sea listens. In the rhythm of the waves, you hear the echo of the hall's old songs, the rumble of voices that may already be gone. When the stars appear, you lift your eyes to them and trace the paths you learned as a boy, mapping the heavens with trembling fingers. The North Star steadies you. It does not promise rescue. It only promises direction. You cling to that as much as you cling to the broken beam that has become your world. On the third night, or the fifth, or perhaps the 10th, because days no longer mean what they used to, you dream while awake. The horizon blurs, the water softens, and for a moment you are not adrift, but standing in a grove of trees older than memory. Their roots sink deep into dark soil, their branches stretch to a sky heavy with stars. You reach out and the bark is cold under your palm, rough and alive. The talisman against your chest grows warm, pulsing in rhythm with the beating of your heart. You do not know if it is a vision or madness, but you whisper to it anyway, promising to stand if you ever set foot on land again. When the shore finally comes, it does not announce itself. The current shifts, the water shallows, and your numb fingers scrape against something solid. Sand. You drag yourself forward, each movement a war against a body that wants to give up. The first wave throws you down, the second lifts you higher, and the third leaves you sprawled on wet earth. You lie there for a long time, face pressed to the grainy surface, tasting mud and salt, letting the earth remind you it still exists. Voices reach you before you open your eyes. They are strange, sharp in a way your language is not, a pattern you cannot follow. Feet crunch on the wet sand near your head, and the faint clink of metal cuts through the hiss of the receding tide. You force your eyes open just as shadows fall over you. The first face you see is covered by a helmet, a shape unlike any you know, the crest marked with a symbol that catches the dim light, a cross. You have never seen it before, but something about it makes the hair on your arms rise. Hands grip your shoulders and haul you upright. Your legs fold under you, too weak to hold your weight. Someone speaks, their tone sharp, commanding. You shake your head, the words meaningless to your ears. The man holding you frowns, his eyes narrowing as he studies your face. Another kneels beside you, fingers brushing against the talisman at your chest. His voice shifts lower, almost questioning. as if the sight of the carved tree has unsettled him. You clutch it to your chest, not out of strength but out of instinct. It is all you have left. A length of cold iron bites into your wrists as they bind you. You do not resist. There is no strength left for it. As they lift you to your feet and begin to drag you away from the sea, you look back once. The tide is pulling at the broken beam you clung to, carrying it back into the grey expanse. The dragon head disappears beneath a wave, and with it, the last piece of the life you knew. The ground beneath you shifts from sand to stone, the smell of the sea fading into earth and wood smoke as they drag you inland. The voices around you are still strange, a chorus you cannot follow, but one word repeats. A name maybe, or a place, or it wraps itself around you as the last sound before exhaustion takes you, a foreign thread weaving into the torn fabric of your life. You close your eyes with the taste of salt still on your lips and the weight of the talisman burning against your heart. When you wake, it is not to the smell of salt or smoke but stone. The air is cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of earth and something unfamiliar, something sharp and metallic, like oil on steel. Your eyes adjust to the dim light filtering through narrow slits in the walls. You are inside a place built not of timber, but of heavy blocks, walls too smooth and perfect to be anything you have seen in the north. The sound of water drips somewhere in the distance, steady and patient. Your wrists ache against the iron that holds them. You move, and the chain whispers against the floor. Footsteps echo long before you see anyone. The rhythm is deliberate, boots striking stone in a cadence that speaks of discipline, not fear. When the door opens, the light behind the figure is so bright it burns your eyes for a heartbeat. He steps inside without hurry, the sound of his armor soft but unmistakable. It is not Viking mail. The lines are different, tighter, the weight distributed like a second skin. Across his chest is the same mark you saw on the beach, a red cross, simple but heavy with meaning you do not yet understand. He studies you in silence, head tilting slightly as if weighing the shape of you against some memory or expectation. When he speaks, the words are still foreign, but the tone is clear. Authority, command, a question you cannot answer. You shake your head, the sound of your own voice strange when you try to speak. It comes out raw, a rasp scraped by salt and thirst. He frowns, but there is no cruelty in his face, only caution. He says something over his shoulder, and another man appears, this one without armor, his robes marked with the same cross in softer thread. A priest, perhaps, though you do not know the word. The robed man kneels, his gaze falling to the talisman still hanging against your chest. His fingers hover over it but do not touch, as if some part of him hesitates. He murmurs to the knight, and the armored man nods once before stepping back into the doorway. You are left with the priest, his voice lower now, not soft exactly, but careful. He speaks again, slower this time, watching your eyes as if hoping meaning might bridge the gap between your worlds. You understand nothing of the words, but you understand the weight behind them. It is not a threat, it is not pity. It is something in between. Days pass in the rhythm of stone and silence. They bring you water and bread so hard it cracks against your teeth, but it keeps you alive. The knight returns often, standing just inside the doorway, his gaze steady. Sometimes he speaks, though, not in questions now, more like a man speaking to himself in the presence of something he cannot yet name. The priest comes too, tracing symbols in the air you do not know, his lips moving in prayers that sound like songs without melody. You begin to recognize patterns in their voices, not meaning but shape. and the sound of them fills the long hours when the dripping water is your only companion. At night, when the cold of the stone floor seeps into your bones, you hold the talisman and close your eyes. In the dark, behind your eyelids, the sea still moves. You see the broken ship vanish beneath the waves, see the roots of the great tree sink deeper into the black water. You whisper to it without words, the same promise you made on the shore and again in the hall. You are not done, you are not lost, you are only waiting. On the fourth morning, or perhaps the seventh, because the light through the slits never changes enough to tell, the knight enters alone. His armor is gone. In its place, a simple tunic and a sword at his hip. He kneels so his eyes are level with yours. For the first time, his voice carries no command, only a question wrapped in quiet weight. You do not understand the words, but you understand the moment. Something in you shifts the same way the tide shifts before a storm. You nod, though you are not sure what you are agreeing to. His mouth curves in the barest ghost of a smile. He rises, unlocks your chains, and lays his hand on your shoulder with the same quiet gravity your father once did. You are led from the stone room into blinding sunlight. The world outside smells of earth and growing things, so different from salt and pine that it makes you dizzy. In the distance, you see walls rising, towers of stone reaching for the sky, and everywhere the mark of the Red Cross. It hangs on banners, on shields, carved into the gates themselves. You do not know where you are. You only know that the sea has given you to this place, and that whatever you were before will never be enough to survive what comes next. The days that follow move in a blur, though not the kind you know from storms or battle. This is a different kind of drowning, one where the weight is not water but walls, and the current is made of voices you cannot understand. They move you through the compound, always under watch, past courtyards of stone where men in white cloaks train in silence. Their movements are precise, measured like the rhythm of oars. Shields rise and fall in patterns that speak of discipline more than fury. You have seen warriors all your life, but never like this. There is no laughter, no boasting, none of the fire that roared in the long hall back home. Here everything burns colder. Your body slowly remembers what it means to eat, to stand, to move, without swaying as if the floor is still shifting under you. The priest visits often, placing bread and water in your hands, his words gentle but firm. Sometimes he gestures at the sky, at his chest, at the red cross sewn into his robe. You watch him closely, piecing together meaning from motion, though the language remains a wall between you. At night, you lie on the straw mat in the corner of your cell and run your thumb over the talisman, tracing the roots and branches until you fall asleep to the memory of pine trees whispering in the wind. One morning, they bring you into a larger chamber, its ceiling high and arched like the inside of a ship turned upside down. Sunlight filters through colored glass, painting the stone floor in crimson and gold. At the center stands the knight who first found you on the shore. His armor gleams even in the muted light, the red cross vivid against the white. He does not speak at first, only studies you with the same steady gaze. Then he draws his sword, not to threaten, but to lay it on the ground between you. His hand rests on the hilt as he says something low and deliberate. You do not know the words, but you know a challenge when you hear one. They place a blade in your hands, not the heavy axe you know, but a sword balanced for precision. It feels strange, the weight pulling differently than what your muscles expect. The knight circles you slowly, his steps deliberate, waiting for you to move. When you do, it is instinct that drives you. The first clash of steel rings loud in the vaulted chamber, echoing like a storm breaking over water. His strength is controlled, every strike measured, but you can feel the testing in each blow. He is not trying to kill you. He is trying to see what you are made of. You fight harder than your body wants to allow, each swing dragging fire through your arms. The sound of metal against metal fills the air, sharper than the clash of axes back home, cleaner somehow, as if this fight is not just about survival, but about something larger. Your breath comes ragged, your legs burning as you force them to hold ground. When his blade knocks yours from your grip, and the tip rests lightly against your chest, you expect the end. Instead, he steps back and lowers the weapon, his expression unreadable. He says a single word, one you have heard whispered among the others. Templar. The priest enters then, his eyes soft but serious. He kneels and gestures for you to do the same. You hesitate only a moment before dropping to one knee, the motion stiff but sure. His hands hover over your head as he speaks words that sound like water running over stone. You do not understand them, but the cadence settles into your bones like the rhythm of the sea. When he finishes, he looks into your eyes and presses his palm gently over the talisman, still hanging against your chest. He does not try to take it. He only nods, as if to say, it can come with you. That night, you sit alone in the small room they now call yours. The sword rests against the wall, its blade clean and waiting. You turn the talisman over in your hand, and for the first time the roots and branches do not feel like a question, but a bridge between the pine and the cross, between the hall and this stone sanctuary, between the boy who once swung a stick in the smoke and the man who now kneels beneath a symbol he does not yet understand. Outside, the wind moves through the courtyard, carrying a faint trace of the sea. You close your eyes and promise to listen. The first night you hear the chanting, it comes through stone like a heartbeat. The sound is low and steady, rising and falling in waves that are not unlike the tide. You lie on the straw mat with your eyes open, the ceiling above you lost in shadow. The words are meaningless to your ears, but something in the rhythm slips under the weight of language. It hums in your bones the way the old songs of the hall once did. You close your eyes, and for a moment you are not in this place of stone, but sitting by the fire back home, the smell of pine smoke in your hair. Morning brings routine. They give you water drawn cold from deep wells and bread that cracks between your teeth. A man with a hooded robe shows you the courtyard where others kneel, heads bowed, hands clasped in shapes you do not yet understand. He gestures for you to join them. You stand stiffly at first, unsure of the ritual, unsure of whether you belong. The ground beneath your knees is cold, the silence heavy, yet when the chanting begins again, something loosens in your chest. It does not feel like worship, it feels like listening. The days are marked not by sun or stars, but by the sound of bells. Their tone is soft, not the loud brash horns of home, but a gentle call that folds over the walls like a blanket. You follow where they lead, to work, to prayer, to the training yard where the knight waits with a blade. He corrects you without words, moving your hands until the grip feels right, forcing your stance until the sword becomes less a tool and more an extension of your arm. The axe is still in your muscles, heavy and direct, but the sword teaches patience. It is a different kind of strength. At night, when the world is quiet, the priest visits. He sits on the stone floor across from you, hands folded, his eyes lingering on the talisman. Once he points to it and says a word you do not know. He then points to the cross on his chest and repeats the same word, His tone is not one of opposition, but of connection. You look down at the bronze in your palm, the carved roots and branches, and then at the simple red mark on his robe. For the first time you wonder if both can exist in the same place. One evening they lead you into a small chapel lit only by candles. The air smells of wax and old wood. A single window lets in a thin line of fading light. The priest kneels at the altar and motions for you to do the same. You obey, not from fear, but from a quiet sense that this moment is important. He dips his fingers into a bowl of water and lets the droplets fall onto your forehead. The chill makes you gasp, and he murmurs words you do not know, his voice as soft as the water itself. You clutch the talisman under your tunic, not in defiance, but in hope. The roots and branches feel warm against your skin. That night, you dream of the tree again. Its roots are deeper now, twisting through dark soil that smells of both pine and earth you do not recognize. The branches reach higher, brushing stars that seem closer than before. In the dream, you stand at the base of the trunk with a sword in one hand and an axe in the other. The talisman glows faintly at your chest, pulsing with the same rhythm as the chanting that seeps through the stone walls. You wake with the sound of it still in your ears, unsure if it came from the dream or the chapel beyond. Days become weeks. The chains are gone now, though the weight of what they meant lingers. You move freely through the courtyards and corridors, though always under watch. The men in white nod when they pass you. Not as one of their own, not yet, but no longer as a stranger. The knight who found you trains with you each morning. His strikes are hard but precise, his eyes always on yours. There is no anger in them, no judgment, only the steady pressure of someone shaping something new out of something broken. One evening, you sit in the courtyard as the sun bleeds into the horizon. The air is warm, the first you have felt since leaving the north. You hold the talisman in your hand and look at the cross carved into the stone above the chapel door. For a moment the lines blur, and you can almost see roots and branches woven into the red mark. You do not know what you are yet, Viking, prisoner, knight, or something in between. But as the bells ring softly in the distance, you know this. The sea did not kill you for a reason. It brought you here. And whatever this place is making of you, the story has only... The first time you see the old monk, he is sitting alone under an olive tree in the outer courtyard. His robe is simple, rough-spun, the fabric worn thin where his knees press into the ground. He does not look at you when you are led past him, but you feel the weight of his presence like a still pool in the middle of a rushing river. Days later, you find him again, this time in the chapel, his lips moving in silent prayer. When his eyes open, they are not startled or suspicious. They are calm, as if he has been waiting. He comes to you that evening, his steps slow but sure. The guard at your side steps back, and for the first time since you arrived, someone kneels to meet your eyes instead of looking down at you. His gaze falls to your hands, and before you can hide them, his fingers brush lightly against your skin. You forget sometimes what is marked there. Faded ink, runes traced into your flesh when you were barely more than a boy, symbols of the north etched by fire and belief. His eyes linger on them, and something changes in his expression. Not fear, not judgment, recognition. He does not speak in the language of the knights. His words are older, softer, a tongue you cannot name, but that moves differently, almost like the cadence of home. You do not understand the meaning, but the sound settles into you like a familiar rhythm. He touches the talisman next, his fingers hovering just above the bronze. Then, with the faintest nod, He presses it back against your chest. There is no attempt to take it, only a quiet acceptance, as if he understands that whatever this is, it cannot be torn away. In the days that follow, the monk visits often. He does not question you, and you do not speak. Instead, he watches as you train with the knight, his eyes tracing every movement, every shift of the blade in your hands. Sometimes he gestures for you to sit beneath the olive tree where he first appeared. There, he draws lines in the dirt with a stick, symbols you half recognize, crosses, circles, and one that makes your chest tighten because it looks too much like a branch reaching skyward. He glances at you then, as if to see whether you notice. You do, but you do not speak. Promises and truths are safer in silence. One afternoon, a storm rolls over the compound. The sky opens with rain that smells of warm earth instead of salt, and the courtyard fills with the sound of water hitting stone. You sit beneath the olive tree with the monk as the rain seeps into your tunic and the talisman cools against your skin. He takes your hand, palm upward, and with his finger traces the shape of the rune on your flesh. Then, slowly, he draws a cross over it. Not to erase, to join. You meet his eyes, and for the first time since you washed ashore, you feel something in your chest unclench. The priest sees you together and does not interfere. The knight sees the monk watching your training and does not question. Whatever this man is, whatever authority he holds, it exists beyond words. At night, you dream again of the tree. Its roots are deeper, its branches stronger. This time there is a faint light at its center, a glow like a flame sheltered from wind. You wake with the sound of rain still dripping from the eaves and the memory of the monk's hand steady against yours. Days stretch into weeks, and the world begins to feel less like a prison and more like a forge. The stone walls that once pressed in now feel like they are shaping you, hammering away the edges until something new emerges. You still do not know what that is. Viking, knight, or something that does not yet have a name. But when the monk places his hand on your shoulder and looks at you with those calm, unshaken eyes, you know this. You are being seen. Not as a prisoner, not as a weapon. As a man standing on the edge of something greater than himself. One evening, as the sun bleeds into the courtyard and the air turns cool, the monk speaks a single word in the knight's language. It is simple, quiet, and yet it lands heavy in the space between you. Brother. He smiles then, faint but real, and walks away without another sound. You sit under the olive tree long after he has gone, your hand wrapped around the talisman, the echo of that word settling into your bones. Brother. A name you never thought you would wear, but one you realize you want to earn. The silence is the hardest part. Not the weight of the stone walls or the ache in your muscles from endless training, but the long stretches of quiet where no blade rings and no voice breaks the air. At first, you fight it. You try to fill the void with memories of home, the crackle of the hall fire, the roar of waves against the cliffs, the songs of men who believed they were immortal. But memory is not sound, and it fades quickly in the press of stillness. Eventually you stop fighting and begin to listen. The days blur together in a rhythm of ritual. Bread and water at dawn, kneeling in the courtyard until your knees throb against the cold stone, the measured movements of the sword drills. No one speaks to you unless necessary, and when they do, it is with simple gestures or words you do not yet understand. It is not cruelty. It is something else entirely. A stripping away. The longer you are here, the more you realize that this silence is not emptiness, but a hammer, shaping you as surely as steel in a forge. You begin to hear things you never noticed before. The way the wind moves through the narrow passages between walls, the soft scrape of boots on stone as men walk in prayer, the gentle splash of water in the basin where the priest washes his hands. Even your own breathing becomes a kind of chant, steady, unbroken. You touch the talisman often, not for comfort, but as a tether. The roots and branches remind you of who you were before the silence began to carve you down. One evening, the knight who found you enters the courtyard without his armor. His steps are soft, his face unreadable. He hands you the sword without a word, and you rise to meet him. The fight is not a test of strength, but of patience. He moves slowly, deliberately, forcing you to match his rhythm. The clash of steel is muted in the twilight, more a whisper than a roar. When he finally disarms you with a gentle twist and the blade clatters to the ground, he does not look triumphant. He only nods once and leaves without a sound. You stand alone in the fading light, your hands empty, your chest heavy with something you cannot name. The monk comes to you later that night. He does not bring bread or water or prayer. He simply sits beside you on the cold floor and lets the silence wrap around you both. After a long while, he speaks a single word in his soft, older tongue. You do not know its meaning, but the sound of it feels like earth after rain, like roots pushing deep into soil. He touches the talisman against your chest, then the stone wall behind you, as if to say the two are not enemies, but parts of the same story. You close your eyes and breathe. Weeks pass. The silence becomes less of a weight and more of a companion. You find yourself kneeling longer, holding the sword steadier, moving with a patience you did not know you possessed. The rage that once burned so close to the surface has sunk deeper, not gone, but tempered. You are not sure if that makes you weaker or stronger. Historians would argue whether this was breaking or building, but in the quiet of those walls, you feel it as both. One morning, you wake before the bell. The courtyard is empty, the air cool and still. You walk to the center and kneel on the stone, the talisman warm against your chest. For the first time, you speak aloud to the silence, not in words of prayer, but in the language of the north. You tell the roots and branches you are still here. You tell the sea you have not forgotten. You tell the cross above the chapel door that you are listening. The words fall into the air and vanish, but the stillness feels different afterward, as if it has heard and chosen to answer in its own way. When the bell finally rings and the others emerge, you remain kneeling a moment longer. You are no longer sure where the Viking ends and the prisoner begins. Perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the man who will rise from this courtyard will be something else entirely. You press the talisman once more against your chest, the carved tree steady beneath your fingers, and let the silence hold you until you are ready to stand. The night they lead you to the edge of the courtyard, the air feels different. It is warm but heavy, the kind of weight that settles over the skin like a hand. The monk walks ahead, the priest beside him carrying a single lantern that sways with each step. The knight follows behind you in silence, his boots soft against the worn stone. You clutch the talisman under your tunic as if it might anchor you to something familiar. The sound of the bell fades into the distance until all you hear is the soft brush of cloth and the faint echo of your own breath. They bring you to an open space beneath the sky. The walls fall away here, leaving only earth and stars. You have not seen them without stone between you and the sky since the night the sea tried to kill you. They are brighter here, sharper somehow, as if the air itself has been holding them in reserve. The monk kneels first, the priest lowering the lantern so its light pools softly on the ground. The knight places a bowl of water in front of you. It is simple, carved from wood, the surface of the water perfectly still. The priest speaks in a voice softer than any you have heard from him before. The words are still foreign, but their weight presses into you. He gestures to the bowl, then to the sky, then to his chest where the red cross rests. His hand moves to touch your heart, then the talisman beneath your tunic. It is not a demand, it is an invitation. You do not fully understand what they are asking, but you know it is a choice, a line drawn between what you were and what you might become. You kneel slowly, the earth cool beneath your knees. The stars above look too much like the ones over the fjord, the same constellations you traced as a boy with your finger in the smoke of the hall fire. For a moment, you are both of those things, the child with the wooden stick and the man with a sword that does not yet feel like his own. You dip your hands into the water. It is cold, but not the cruel cold of the sea. It is gentle, clean. When you lift it to your face, the drops run down your skin like rain after a long drought. The monk places his hand lightly on your shoulder. He says nothing. He does not have to. His presence speaks louder than words. The priest's voice rises again, a chant now, flowing like a river you have only just found. You close your eyes and let the sound wrap around you. The talisman against your chest grows warm, not with heat, but with a weight that feels alive. For the first time, you are not clutching it in fear or longing. You are holding it as if it belongs here, as if it has been waiting for this moment. When the water touches your head a second time, the world seems to pause. The night air stills, the stars hold their breath, and even your heart slows to listen. You do not feel like you are losing something, you feel like you are opening a door. Behind it is not a god you know or a god you were taught to fear, but something vast enough to hold both. The roots of the tree twist deeper into the soil of your memory. The branches stretch higher into a sky you are learning to trust. When it is over, no one speaks. The priest offers his hand and helps you rise. The knight bows his head slightly, the faintest sign of acknowledgement. The monk lingers a moment longer, his hand brushing over the talisman once more. He looks at you as if to say nothing has been taken from you, only added. You touch it in return, the bronze cool again, but steady. It feels different now, not heavier, not lighter, just more. They leave you alone under the stars for a while. You sit on the earth with your knees drawn up, the smell of damp soil and candle smoke mingling in the warm air. You tilt your head back and trace the constellations again, the same ones you knew as a boy, the same ones that watched you through the storm. You whisper to them in the language of the north, not asking for forgiveness, not even asking for strength. You tell them you are still here. You tell them you are still becoming. And for the first time, the silence does not answer back. It simply holds you, and that is enough. The first time they hand you the cloak, your fingers hesitate before touching it. White, heavier than it looks, the fabric smells faintly of smoke and sun-warmed stone. The red cross, sewn into its center, seems to pulse against the pale cloth, not alive, but heavy with the weight of all the men who have worn it before you. The knight stands before you without his helmet, his expression calm, his eyes sharp, as if measuring not your body, but the soul that will carry this symbol. Behind him the priest watches in silence. The monk sits in the shadow of the chapel wall, his presence as steady as the earth. You drape the cloak over your shoulders and the world tilts. It is not the weight of the fabric that makes you sway. It is the shift inside you, the collision of what you were and what you are being asked to become. You can almost hear the hall back home, the roar of the fire, the songs that praised men who took what they wanted with axe and shield. The memory presses hard against the quiet of this courtyard. You clutch the talisman beneath the cloak, fingers curling tight around the bronze. The roots and branches feel sharper against your skin, as if reminding you they are still there. The ceremony is simple, no grand speeches, no trumpets or feasts. A bowl of water, a blade resting on the altar, a prayer spoken in words you are starting to understand piece by piece. Brotherhood, oath, protection. These words rise again and again, shaping the air around you. The priest places his hand over your heart, the cross between his palm and your chest. The monk rises and places his hand over the talisman under the cloak, bridging the two symbols without a word. The knight draws his sword and touches the flat of the blade to each of your shoulders. It is not a gesture of ownership. It is a promise, both theirs and yours. When the ritual ends, the cloak feels less like cloth and more like a question draped across your back. You walk into the courtyard, the weight of it moving with every step. The other knights nod to you as you pass, not with celebration, but with quiet acknowledgement. You are one of them now, though you are still not sure what that means. You catch sight of yourself in the polished surface of a water basin, a man with Viking scars and Templar colours. The image feels strange, as if two lives are trying to occupy the same skin. Training intensifies. The sword becomes more familiar, the drills more precise. You ride with the knights into the surrounding lands, not for war, but for protection. Villages greet you with cautious eyes and soft voices, their hands reaching for the cross on your cloak like it is a shield against the world. You have never been looked at that way before. Back home, respect was earned in blood and fear. Here, it is given in hope. It makes the cloak heavier and lighter all at once. At night, you sit under the olive tree, the cloak wrapped around you as the wind moves through its branches. The monk joins you, his presence as steady as ever. He does not speak, and you do not need him to. The silence between you is different now, less a wall and more a bridge. You take the talisman from under the cloak and lay it in your palm, staring at the roots and branches. The red cross on your chest catches the corner of your vision, and for the first time you do not feel them fighting. You feel them reaching toward each other. You dream of the tree again. This time the trunk is wider, stronger. The roots sink into both salt water and dry earth. The branches are heavy with something unseen, as if they are growing into a shape you cannot yet understand. You wake with the cloak tangled around you and the talisman pressed into your chest. The morning bell rings, soft and steady, and you rise with a sense that the world has shifted again, not violently this time, but with the quiet force of a tide changing direction. Later, as you walk through the courtyard, a young recruit glances at you with wide eyes. His gaze lingers on the cloak, on the cross, on the way you carry yourself now. You remember being that boy, staring at the warriors in the hall, dreaming of a story to call your own. You offer him a small nod, the same one your father once gave you on the shore before the first battle. His shoulders straighten almost imperceptibly. In that moment, you realize something that makes your chest tighten. You are no longer just wearing the cloak. You are becoming the promise it carries. The road to the Holy Land begins not with a battle cry, but with the slow creak of saddles and the steady rhythm of hooves on packed earth. The air grows warmer with every mile, the smell of pine and salt fading into dust and sun-baked stone. You ride among the column of white cloaks, the red crosses glowing in the harsh light. The cloak still feels new on your shoulders, heavy with the memory of vows and the quiet weight of expectation. The talisman rests beneath it, cool against your chest, the bronze warmed only by your skin. It is a second heartbeat you cannot ignore. Days stretch long under a sky wider than any you have ever seen. The land rolls out in waves of green fields and scattered villages before slowly giving way to plains that drink in the sun. At night, you make camp under stars that feel closer than the ones at home, yet somehow the same. You trace their patterns out of habit, whispering the old names under your breath, even as the priest murmurs prayers in a different tongue across the fire. The knight who found you rides at the head of the column. He does not look back often, but when he does, his eyes meet yours with a steady calm that anchors you more than the horizon. The first time you see Constantinople, it steals the breath from your chest. Towers of stone rise from the earth like mountains shaped by human hands. The domes gleam under the sun, catching light in a way that makes them seem alive. Ships crowd the harbour, their sails a patchwork of colours and symbols you do not recognize. The air hums with voices, hundreds, thousands, speaking in a dozen languages. It feels like standing at the centre of the world. You think of the fjord, the quiet of the long hall, and wonder what those old warriors would say if they saw this place of stone and splendour. You pass through markets heavy with spice and incense, the air thick with scents that make your head swim. Children run between stalls, their laughter rising above the hum of trade. For a moment you forget the weight of the cloak and the talisman. For a moment you are just a man, seeing a world larger than the one he thought existed. That night, as you camp outside the city walls, you hold the talisman in your palm and whisper the names of the gods you once called on, not in prayer, not in defiance, just to let them know you are still here. The road beyond Constantinople grows harsher, the sun burns hotter, the land drier. Dust clings to the hem of your cloak, turning white to pale gold. The men drink water in measured sips, their voices quieter now. The stories told around the fire at night are fewer, replaced by the soft murmur of prayer and the sound of weary bodies settling into the ground. The priest speaks often of the city you are heading toward, a place where heaven and earth meet, where men have killed and died for centuries over the promise of something eternal. You listen in silence, the words sinking into you like slow rain on dry soil. One evening, as the sky bleeds into shades of copper and violet, you crest a ridge and see it for the first time. Jerusalem. The walls rise from the earth in solemn lines, the stone catching the last light of the day. The air feels different here, heavy not with heat, but with history. You cannot explain why, but you feel it press against your chest, the same way the sea did before the storm. You tighten your grip on the reins, the talisman thumping softly against your heart with each step of the horse. You are thousands of miles from the fjord, from pine trees and cold waves, yet in this moment you feel as if both worlds are looking at you, waiting to see what you will do. The camp that night is quiet. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. You sit alone on the edge of the firelight, the cloak wrapped around you, the talisman warm against your skin. You think of the boy who once sat in the long hall with a wooden stick in his hand and fire in his eyes. You think of the man who clung to a broken beam in a black sea, whispering promises to a tree he had never seen. You think of the knight's steady gaze and the monk's calm hand over your shoulder. And for the first time you understand something you did not before. You are not here to choose between the north and the cross. You are here to carry both. The bells of the camp ring softly as the sun sets completely, their tone carrying over the dry earth like a prayer without words. You lie back and look at the stars. They are the same ones that watched you in the fjord, the same ones that burned above the storm. You trace their shapes and feel the roots of the tree sink deeper. The branches stretch higher. The world is larger than you ever dreamed, but some things, some promises are constant. You fall asleep with the weight of that truth steady against your chest. The siege begins at dawn. The call to arms rolls across the camp in waves, carried by the clang of steel and the low hum of prayer. You rise with the others, the white cloak heavy on your shoulders, the red cross stark against the dust-stained fabric. The walls of the city rise ahead like the back of some ancient beast, silent and immovable under the pale light. The air tastes of sand and tension, every breath filled with the weight of men preparing to kill or be killed. You check the sword at your side, the talisman pressing steady against your chest, and feel the two symbols like opposing tides pulling at the same shore. The assault is relentless. Arrows cut the air, the hiss of their flight sharp in your ears. The clang of steel on shields becomes a rhythm, a heartbeat you cannot escape. You move as you were trained, not with the wild fury of an axe, but with the precise patience of a blade meant to defend as much as strike. The ground shakes under the weight of siege engines, the dust rising until the sun itself seems to burn through a haze of war. Somewhere to your left, the knight who pulled you from the shore raises his sword, his voice calm, even as chaos swirls around him. You match his steps without thinking, the two of you moving as one. The first breach comes hours later. The gates shudder under impact and splinter, the roar of men surging forward like a wave breaking on rock. You are inside the city before you even realize it, the narrow streets amplifying the sound of steel and screams. And then you see it. Amid the chaos, amid the clash of faith and fear, a small shape crouched in the shadow of a broken wall. A child. No more than 7, eyes wide and unblinking, clutching a bundle of cloth to a chest, too small to hold the fear it carries. Your orders are clear. No hesitation, no mercy for anything that might become an enemy. You raise your sword because that is what the cloak demands, because that is what survival in this place has been hammered into you to mean. The child does not move, does not cry, only stares. You hear the roar of battle behind you, the voice of the knight calling commands, the prayers of the priest rising like smoke. And then, softer than all of it, you hear the faint echo of another sound. Waves against stone, the old hall fire, your mother's voice pressing the talisman into your palm, the roots and the branches. You lower the sword. It is not a decision made with thought. It is not rebellion. It is something deeper, older than this city, older than the cloak on your shoulders. You step forward, kneeling until you are eye level with the child. The bundle of cloth shifts, and you see it is not treasure or weapon, but another life, a baby pressed against the small chest. You sheath the sword and scoop them both into your arms. The child does not fight, does not even breathe loudly, only holds on as if you were the last solid thing in a world made of fire. When you emerge from the side street, the knight sees you. His eyes drop to the child in your arms, to the sword at your hip, still clean of blood. For a heartbeat, the world stills. No words pass between you, only a silent understanding. He gives a single nod before turning back to the fight, his voice rising to command once more. You move quickly, carrying the child through the chaos, past shattered gates and back into the harsh light of the outer field. That night, when the fires burn low and the city lies behind walls soaked in both victory and loss, you sit apart from the others. The child sleeps beside you, the small bundle rising and falling with each breath. You hold the talisman in your hand, tracing the familiar lines in the bronze. For the first time, the cross on your cloak and the carved tree do not feel like rivals. They feel like two halves of the same vow, to protect what cannot protect itself. The monk finds you there before dawn. He kneels beside you, his hand resting briefly on your shoulder. He does not look at the cloak or the talisman. He looks at the child, sleeping in the dust, and then at you. When his eyes meet yours, they hold no judgment, only quiet recognition. Without a word, he lifts the child into his arms and carries them away toward the chapel. You sit alone in the grey light of morning, the sound of waves in your memory louder than the echoes of war. You have crossed a line you cannot uncross, but for the first time since the storm took everything from you, you feel it is the right one. Jerusalem breathes differently after the siege. The streets that once echoed with battle now hum with the weight of prayers whispered in a dozen tongues. Smoke rises not from fire but from incense, curling above rooftops like quiet offerings. You walk those streets with the other knights, the white cloak brushing against dust and stone, the red cross catching the sun in brief flashes. The people look at you with eyes that are not afraid, not exactly, but wary. You have seen that look before on the faces of coastal villagers back home when the longships came into view. Power always casts a shadow, even when it claims to bring light. Your duties shift. There are no raids, no sieges, only the slow, steady work of guarding roads and pilgrims. The caravan moves under your watch, winding through dry hills where the wind carries the scent of sand and faint traces of distant water. At night, the stars spill across the sky, familiar yet strange, above this foreign land. You lie awake listening to the soft murmur of prayer and the low shuffle of hooves. The talisman rests against your chest, warm from the day's heat, and you wonder how something forged in the cold north can feel at home, here under the desert sky. One evening, as you stand watch near the Temple Mount, the monk approaches. His steps are soft on the stone, his robe whispering in the dry air. He does not speak, only gestures for you to follow. You hesitate for a moment before leaving your post, the weight of duty heavy on your shoulders. He leads you through narrow corridors and into a chamber beneath the earth, a place that smells of old stone and older secrets. The air is cool, and the silence hums in your bones. The chamber is small, lit only by the flicker of a single candle. In its center stands a simple altar, its surface worn smooth by hands you will never know. The monk kneels and touches the stone with a reverence that goes beyond ritual. He looks at you then, and for the first time you see something like urgency in his calm eyes. He gestures to the wall. Carved faintly into the stone are symbols, some you recognize as crosses, others older, rougher, the language of men long gone. And there, half hidden in shadow, is a shape that makes your breath catch, a tree. Roots curling deep, branches reaching outward, carved into this holy place centuries before you were born. You step closer, your fingers brushing the lines in the stone. They are rough under your skin, worn by time, but still alive somehow. You take the talisman from your chest and hold it up. The shapes are not exact, but they speak the same language: roots, branches, connection. The monk places his hand over yours, pressing the talisman gently against the carving. For a moment, the room feels smaller, as if the weight of both your worlds has settled into this single point of stone and bronze. You kneel beside him, not out of obedience, but out of something deeper. The air feels thick, as if the earth itself is listening. You trace the lines again, and whisper the old words of the north, the ones you have kept buried in the quiet of your chest. The monk does not stop you. He bows his head as if the language itself is a prayer worth hearing. When you finish, he dips his fingers in the candle wax and draws a small cross over the carving of the tree. It does not erase it. It joins it. That night, You sit alone on the outer wall, the desert wind cool against your face. Below you, the city hums with life. Above you, the stars burn bright and steady. You hold the talisman in your hand, tracing the familiar lines. For the first time, the weight of it does not feel like a tether to the past or a shield against the present. It feels like a bridge, something that can carry both worlds without breaking. You whisper into the night, not to gods, not to men, but to the roots and branches that have followed you from the cold fjord to this dry, ancient stone. You tell them you are ready to carry both. The years blend together on the pilgrim roads, dust and prayers, swords and silence, all weaving into the long stretch of time you cannot measure except by the weight of the sun and the feel of the talisman against your chest. You have seen men kneel in gratitude and men fall into the dirt with their last breath. You have heard the chants of the faithful rise like smoke and the sobs of those who never made it to their promised land. The white cloak is no longer new, its edges are worn, the red cross faded from sun and sand, yet every time you lift your hand to your chest, the talisman beneath feels the same: bronze, roots, branches, memory. It happens on a morning that begins like any other. The caravan is small, a mix of pilgrims with tired faces and guards who have walked this path so many times, their boots know every stone. The air is cool, the wind carrying the faint scent of rain, even in this dry land. You ride near the front, the knight beside you silent as always, his gaze scanning the horizon. The monk travels with you this time, his robe stirring faintly in the breeze, his calm presence steadying in a way you can never put into words. The attack is sudden but not surprising. It never is. Shadows spill from the rocks above, the harsh cry of men desperate or cruel, cutting through the morning quiet. Arrows hiss, hooves strike the earth, and the world folds into the sound of steel and fear. You dismount before the horse can panic, the sword sliding into your hand like an old friend. The first clash shakes through your arms, the impact ringing against bone. You move with the calm born of years, each strike not wild but deliberate, the weight of the cloak reminding you that you are more than a blade. Then you hear it, a scream sharper than the others. You turn and see one of the pilgrims, a young woman clutching a bundle in her arms, her face pale with terror as a bandit lunges toward her. You move before you think, the sword cutting the air, but you are too late to reach her before the man's strike comes down. It never lands. The monk is there, his robe whipping as he steps between them, his staff catching the blade with a sound that makes your chest tighten. His calm eyes lock with yours for a heartbeat before the bandit shoves hard, the monk's body crumpling under the weight of the blow. You are there in an instant, the sword cleaving through the chaos, but the world has already narrowed to the sound of the monk hitting the earth. The bandit falls, his body forgotten before it touches the ground. You drop to your knees beside the monk. His breathing is shallow, his hand clutching the fabric over your chest, over the talisman. His lips move, and you lean close, straining to hear. The words are faint, a language you have never fully understood, but one word is clear: roots. You press your hand over his and the talisman beneath, the bronze warm despite the cool morning air. The battle rages around you, but in this small circle of earth, there is only his eyes and the weight of what he is passing to you without ceremony or words. When his hand falls away, it is not heavy. It is light, as if something has shifted from him into you, as if the bridge he began carving between worlds has been placed fully in your hands. The fight ends eventually, as they always do. The ground is littered with bodies, the air heavy with dust and the faint scent of blood. The pilgrims gather in silence, their eyes on you as you rise, the monk's body cradled in your arms. You carry him to the edge of the road, where a single tree grows against all odds in the rocky soil. Its roots twist into the earth like fingers holding on. You lay him there gently, pressing the talisman against your chest once more, before placing his staff at his side. You do not speak. There are no words strong enough to hold this moment. That night, the stars are cold and sharp above you. You sit alone by the fire, the talisman heavy in your palm. It feels different now, not because it has changed, but because you have. The roots and branches etched into the bronze seem to pulse faintly in the firelight, as if alive. You trace them slowly, remembering the monk's calm hand, his quiet eyes, the word that will never leave you. Roots. You whisper it into the flames and feel it settle into you like the sea's tide, a promise renewed, a bridge you will carry until the end. The road stretches on, but it feels emptier now. The absence of the monk is not loud. It is quiet in a way that settles into every step, every breath, every sound of hooves on dry earth. The caravan moves, as it always has, but you can feel the difference, as if the bridge he built between worlds has left a gap you are now meant to fill. The white cloak on your shoulders feels heavier, the talisman beneath it warmer. You touch the bronze often, tracing the roots and branches, not as a habit, but as a way of reminding yourself that something of him still lingers there. The other knights do not speak of him. That is their way. Grief is carried in silence, folded into prayer and action. The priest's voice is softer now when he leads the evening chants. Even the knight who pulled you from the sea moves differently, his calm sharpened by something you cannot name. You ride beside him in silence, the two of you a steady line at the front of the caravan. You wonder if he feels it too, the sense that something has shifted forever. Weeks later, the road brings you to a small outpost built of sun-bleached stone. Pilgrims rest in its shade, their faces weary, their hands clutching the edges of hope like a fragile thing. You walk among them, offering water, guiding tired bodies toward the shelter. A child stops in front of you, her eyes catching on the red cross of your cloak. She reaches out with hesitant fingers and brushes the fabric as if it might burn. You kneel so you are level with her and pull the talisman from beneath the cloth. The bronze glints in the light as you hold it out for her to see. Her small hand hovers over the carved tree before she smiles, quick and shy, and runs back to her family. You watch her go and feel something inside you soften. That night, you sit outside the outpost on a low wall, the desert cooling under the fading sun. The stars emerge one by one, familiar and eternal. You take the talisman into your hand, the bronze warm from your skin, and hold it up to the sky. For a moment, the carved branches seem to align with the constellations above, as if the tree etched into the metal and the tree you see in dreams are the same. You wonder if the monk knew this would happen, if he knew the weight he placed on you was not just duty but connection. You whisper the word he gave you under your breath. Roots. It feels steady on your tongue, grounding you in a way nothing else can. The next morning, you find the knight waiting for you at the edge of the camp. He does not speak, only hands you a small piece of cloth. You unfold it and find the monk's staff symbol carved into wood, simple and unadorned. You do not know how it reached him, how it found its way here, but you know what it means. You tuck it into your belt beside the sword, feeling the weight of both, steel and wood, cross and tree. You are carrying more than your own story now. As the caravan moves on, the land changes, hills give way to open plains, and the horizon stretches until it feels endless. The air is dry, but when the wind shifts, you catch the faintest hint of salt. It is impossible this far inland, but it makes you close your eyes for a moment. You hear the fjord. You hear the hall. You hear the monk's quiet voice and your mother's trembling hands pressing the talisman into your palm. You open your eyes to the dust and the sun and realize something you have been avoiding. You are not one thing anymore, not Viking, not Templar, not prisoner, not savior. You are all of them, stitched together by roots and branches that cross borders and oceans. Historians might argue whether such a man ever existed, whether two worlds could truly live in one body without tearing it apart. But as the wind carries that impossible scent of salt across the desert, and the talisman rests steady against your heart, you know this much. You are no longer just a man walking a road, you are a bridge. And bridges are meant to hold more than themselves. That night, you dream of the tree again. Its roots are vast now, threading through both salt water and dry earth. Its branches are heavy with leaves that shimmer like steel and cloth. At its base stands the monk, his calm eyes watching as you step forward. He does not speak. He does not need to. You place the talisman at the trunk in the dream, and for the first time the tree bows slightly as if acknowledging that you understand. You wake with the sunrise painting the horizon in gold and red. The caravan stirs, voices rising soft and tired. You tuck the talisman back beneath the cloak and rise to your feet. The road stretches ahead, long and uncertain, but your steps feel steady. You are no longer walking away from something or towards something, you are carrying both. The Pilgrim road is quiet that morning, almost too quiet. The sky is pale and washed of colour, the air heavy with the weight of a storm that has not yet come. The caravan moves slowly along the narrow pass, the walls of rock on either side, turning the sound of hooves and footsteps into hollow echoes. You ride near the front, the cloak brushing against the flank of your horse, the talisman resting where it always does, steady and warm. Something about the silence makes your chest tighten. You have walked this path enough times to know when the earth is holding its breath. The attack is not loud. It does not come with a war cry or the clash of drums. It comes with the sudden whine of an arrow cutting through air and the soft thud as it buries itself into the dirt beside the lead horse. The next arrow finds flesh, and the quiet breaks apart in an instant. Shadows spill over the ridge above, men pouring down the slopes like water breaking a dam. Their numbers are too many. You do not need to count to know. You draw the sword, the weight familiar now, the motion instinctive. The first clash shakes through your arms, steel screaming against steel, the sound of survival ringing sharp and clear. The mud comes quick. The narrow pass is soft from rain days before, and as boots churn the earth, the ground turns slick beneath you. You slip, catch yourself, strike again. The air fills with the smell of wet dirt and blood, a mix so strong it clings to the back of your throat. The bandits press hard, their numbers overwhelming, their movements desperate. You hear the priest shouting to gather the pilgrims, the knight's voice cutting through chaos like the bell of a chapel calling men to prayer. You fight to reach him, to hold the line, but every step is a battle against both men and earth itself. A strike catches you off guard, the blade glancing off your shoulder and spinning you into the mud. You land hard, the breath driven from your chest. The sword skids from your hand, vanishing into the muck. You scramble for it, fingers closing on nothing but wet earth. When you push up onto your knees, you see the bandit coming, his weapon raised, his eyes locked on you. Your hand closes around the hilt of your second sword, the shorter one you have carried but never drawn. When it comes free, the world tilts. The blade is not like the others. The steel is dark, etched with faint lines that catch the light. Runes. Your breath catches as recognition floods you. Ulfberht, a relic of the north, forged in fire and salt, a weapon that has no place here, and yet feels like it has been waiting. The talisman presses hot against your chest as if it knows. The bandit lunges, and you meet him with a roar that is not the disciplined call of a Templar, but the raw cry of a Viking. The first strike bites through his guard, the second drops him into the mud. The world narrows to the ring of steel and the pounding of your own heart. You move through the fight with a strength that feels older than this road, older than the cloak on your shoulders. The mud sucks at your boots, blood splashes warm against your hands, but you do not stop. You cannot. The talisman burns like fire now, every heartbeat a drum of roots and branches, sea and snow. The other knights see you, and for a moment their eyes widen, not in fear, not in judgment, but in recognition. Something ancient has stepped onto this road. When the last bandit falls and the echoes die, the silence returns. It is not the same silence as before. It is heavier, filled with the weight of what just happened. You stand there, the Ulfberht dripping mud and blood, the talisman cooling against your chest. The knight approaches, his gaze steady. He does not ask, he does not need to. His hand rests briefly on your shoulder, and in that simple touch you feel both acknowledgement and a question that has no answer. That night the camp is subdued. The pilgrims whisper prayers of thanks, their voices soft under the stars. You sit apart from them, the Ulfberht across your knees, the talisman in your hand. You trace the runes with your thumb, the familiar curves and lines, bringing the fjord back in flashes, the hall fire, the pine trees, the smell of salt and smoke. You are not one thing anymore. You are not two things either. You are the space between them, the roots digging into both worlds, the branches stretching into something new. Historians would debate whether such men ever walked this earth, whether a Viking could truly kneel under a cross without losing himself, whether a Templar could carry the weight of the North without breaking. But sitting there under the endless sky, the Ulfberht warm in your hands and the talisman steady against your heart, you know the answer does not matter. You are not proof, you are not legend. You are simply what happens when the sea chooses to leave someone alive. As dawn begins to paint the horizon in pale gold, you rise. The mud has dried into cracks along your boots. The cloak is stiff with dirt and blood. The Ulfberht gleams faintly in the first light. You tuck the talisman back under the cloth and tighten your grip on the sword. The road ahead is long. You will carry both worlds on it until it ends. The caravan moves slower now. The fight has left its mark not only on bodies but on the air itself, a quiet heaviness that clings to every step. The pilgrims walk close together, their faces pale but determined. The other knights keep their silence, their eyes scanning every ridge and shadow along the road. You ride near the rear, the Ulfberht strapped across your back, its weight familiar in a way that feels like both comfort and burden. The talisman rests against your chest, cool again now, though every time your hand touches it, you can almost feel the heat of the battle in its bronze. Days stretch into weeks, the land begins to change. The dry earth softens into greener hills, and the air carries a faint chill that brushes against your skin like a memory. The first time you smell pine on the wind, it stops you in your tracks. It is faint, almost imagined, but it pulls at something deep inside you. That night, as the camp settles, you walk to the edge of the ridge and look north. The stars are different here, but you can still find the ones you grew up tracing with your finger in the smoke of the hall. You hold the talisman up to them and whisper the names of places you have not seen in decades. the fjord, the grove, home. When the caravan reaches its destination, the knight who found you on the shore takes you aside. His face is calm, his eyes steady, but there is something in them you have not seen before. He does not speak much, he never has, but the words he does say are simple. There are other roads, other battles, but your path is your own now. He places his hand over the talisman beneath your cloak and nods once. It is not dismissal, it is release. You do not join the others when they ride out again. You watch them vanish into the horizon, white cloaks catching the wind, red crosses flashing in the sun. You stand there, long after they are gone, the weight of years pressing down and something else rising beneath it. The sea did not keep you alive to die on a pilgrim road. The roots and branches did not hold you through fire and silence to end here. The wind shifts again, carrying the scent of pine, sharper this time, undeniable. The decision is not made in words. It is made in the steady beat of your heart and the quiet pull of home. You trade the white cloak for a simple wool one, the red cross folded carefully and placed inside a chest you leave behind. The sword you keep, both of them. The Ulfberht hangs at your side, the Templar blade on your back. You ride north alone, each mile stripping away the dust of the Holy Land and replacing it with the salt of the sea in your memory. The land rises and falls beneath you, rivers cutting silver lines through green fields. The air grows colder. The stars grow sharper. Each breath tastes more like the life you left behind. Weeks turn into months. Villages pass in quiet blur, some greeting you with cautious eyes, others with small kindnesses. You speak little, there are no words for what you carry. The nights grow longer, the wind colder. Snow appears first as a whisper along the ridges, then as a blanket over the earth. When you see the fjord for the first time, your body stops moving on its own. The water stretches out dark and still beneath a pale sky. The pine trees stand as they always have, their needles whispering to the wind. Nothing has changed and everything has. You walk the last mile on foot. The snow crunches under your boots, the talisman warm against your chest. The village is smaller than you remember, the roofs lower, the walls weathered by storms and time. A few faces turn as you approach, eyes narrowing in recognition or perhaps only in the ghost of it. You do not know if they see a Viking returned or a stranger in foreign steel. You kneel in the snow before the first door and press the talisman into your palm until the edges bite your skin. You are not here to claim. You are here to give back what the sea left behind. That night you sit alone on the shore. The fjord breathes slow and steady, the same rhythm you have carried across oceans and deserts. You place the Ulfberht beside you in the snow, the Templar blade on the other side, and the talisman between them. The roots and the branches catch the pale moonlight, and for the first time in years, you feel the weight lift. You have carried both worlds far enough. Now it is time to plant them in the soil that made you. The fjord is quiet in the mornings, the kind of quiet that does not feel empty but full, as if the air itself remembers too much to speak. You rise early, the cold biting at your skin in the way you have missed, and walk down to the water's edge. The waves lap against the stones with a sound softer than memory, steady and patient. You kneel there every day, not in prayer exactly, but in something that feels close to it. The Ulfberht rests on one side of you, the Templar blade on the other, and the talisman hangs steady against your chest. Roots and branches, cross and steel, sea and snow, all of it here now. The village has accepted you in the way the North always does, without words. They bring food without asking questions. They repair the roof of the small chapel you built by the pine grove. Children watch you with wide eyes as you walk the narrow paths. Some whisper old stories about you. Some make up new ones. You do not correct them. Stories are meant to grow beyond the truth. At night, the fire in the chapel burns low, and you sit with the talisman in your hands, tracing the lines you have worn into the bronze over decades. It is smooth now, the carved tree softened by time and touch, but the roots and branches are still there. They always will be. You begin to teach the boys and girls who linger near the shore, not the raids or the bloodlust of your youth, but the balance of steel and patience you learned on the pilgrim roads. You teach them to hold the axe steady, the sword calm. You tell them without telling them that strength is not only in taking, but in carrying. The first time one of them lifts the Ulfberht with both hands, eyes wide with reverence, you feel something inside you shift. Not pride exactly. Something gentler. A seed planted in soil you once thought barren. The seasons turn, snow melts into green, green fades into gold, and the air carries salt and pine in equal measure. You sit often beneath the old pine tree by the chapel. Its trunk is wider now, the bark rough beneath your fingers, its roots twisting deep into the earth like they are holding the world together. You press the talisman to the bark and close your eyes. Sometimes you hear the hall, fire in the wind. Sometimes you hear the monk's soft voice. Sometimes you hear nothing at all, and that silence feels like the truest answer. One evening, a storm rolls over the fjord. The sky darkens and the wind howls through the trees, carrying the scent of salt and something older. You stand in the doorway of the chapel and watch the waves crash against the stones, the water foaming white against the black. For a moment, it feels like the night the sea took everything from you. But you are not the same man who clung to a broken beam, nor the boy with a wooden stick in the long hall. You are something forged in all of it. You step out into the rain, let it soak the cloak you no longer wear, and tilt your face to the sky. The water is cold, but it feels like home. When the storm passes, the air is clean and sharp. The stars emerge one by one, and you find yourself tracing them again, the same constellations you followed across oceans and deserts. You touch the talisman and feel the steady pulse of life beneath your hand, roots and branches always growing, always reaching. The chapel glows faintly behind you, the pine tree sways gently above you, and the fjord breathes in slow rhythm. You sit on the cold ground and let the quiet hold you. You have been a boy, a chieftain, a prisoner, a knight, a pilgrim. Now you are simply a man, sitting between sea and sky, carrying both in the steady beat of his heart. Winter returns quietly, laying its first thin veil of snow over the pine grove and the chapel roof. The fjord freezes at the edges, the water moving slower now, each wave a soft sigh under the weight of ice. You rise earlier these days, though your body moves with the careful patience of age. The Ulfberht still rests where it always has, its steel clean and oiled, the Templar blade beside it. You touch them both every morning, not to wield them, but to remember. The talisman hangs against your chest, its bronze worn smooth by decades of fingers tracing the same roots and branches. It is lighter now, not because it has changed, but because you have. The children come to you still. Their voices ring bright against the muted air, their boots crunching over the snow as they race to the pine tree. You teach them less now, not because there is nothing left to say, but because they have begun to teach themselves. You watch as they swing wooden swords and laugh in the cold, their breath rising in white clouds. One boy pauses to look at you, his eyes lingering on the talisman, as if he feels the weight of it even without touching. You give him a small nod, the same quiet gesture your father once gave you on the shore so many years ago. His shoulders square, and the world tilts just slightly, a circle closing where it began. Your nights are spent in the chapel, the fire low, the air filled with the soft crackle of wood. You sit beneath the pine in the evenings, the roots beneath you solid and unmoving. Sometimes you speak to the tree, not with words, but with breath, letting the silence carry everything you have lived. Sometimes you dream of the hall, the firelight flickering on timber walls. Sometimes you dream of the storm, the black waves rising and falling. Sometimes you dream of the monk's calm eyes and the word he gave you. Roots. Always roots. On the last morning, the sky is pale and clear. The snow lies soft over the ground, the air so still it feels like the world is waiting. You rise slowly, your breath curling into the cold, and walk to the pine tree. The Ulfberht rests in your hand, the Templar blade in the other. You kneel at the base of the tree and press the talisman against the bark. The metal is cool, the carved lines faint now but still alive. You breathe in the scent of pine and salt, of snow and fire, long burned away. You whisper into the cold air, not a prayer, not a farewell, only a promise kept. When they find you, you are sitting upright beneath the pine, your eyes closed, the Ulfberht driven gently into the snow before you. The Templar blade rests across your knees, the talisman hanging still against your chest. The wind moves through the grove with a soft hum, carrying the scent of the sea across the frozen earth. No one speaks. They do not need to. The chapel bell rings once, its tone low and steady, and the sound settles into the fjord like the last heartbeat of a story long told. That night, the snow falls thicker, covering footprints, smoothing the earth. The pine stands silent, its roots deep, its branches heavy with white. In the chapel, the fire burns low, its light soft against stone and wood. The children sit together in quiet, their wooden swords resting beside them. Outside, the fjord breathes slow and patient, carrying the weight of waves and memory. The world holds its silence, not in mourning, but in peace. The man who was boy and chieftain and knight has come home, and the roots have carried him far enough.